G'day and welcome to the Game Day Squad NRL Fantasy Show. I am Bill and that's Stu, and we're the Fantasy Bros. We are back again, partnering with Game Day Squad to bring you all you need to know to succeed in GDS Rugby League this season. Stu, it's a little bit different, mate. Bit different to usual. We are going live on a Tuesday night rather than tomorrow night, the usual Wednesday. But it is Teamless Tuesday. Teams have dropped, and it's time to take a deep dive into our round 10 GDS squads. Obviously, you might be able to hear I've lost my voice a little bit. That's what 3 days of absolute unreal footy will do to you, especially that last game with the Raiders getting up in Golden Point. You must have been cheering there, mate.
Yeah, g'day, Dill. G'day, viewers. G'day, listeners. Yeah, I heard you become a bit of an honorary Raiders fan. I know the Warriors are going pretty well this season, but the Raiders are flying, aren't they? You must have enjoyed seeing a team you support, even if it was only for the one match, get a win over the Storm. I don't think your mob have been able to do that for, 15 or 16 matches in a row?
Must have been nice.
Yeah, mate, Magic Round. What a great round for my Game Day squad teams. Pretty good as well. I finished fourth in Challenger. Probably 2 or 3 mistakes sort of costing me a shot at some of the money there, but positive news is I'm sitting fourth overall, so I climb up a couple of spots there in the Challenger comp. That's my best comp at the moment, and I've just got my heart set on that prize card at the end of the season. There were some massive scores during the round, obviously from individual players, but XRP and Fire Breathers. Geez, Fire Breathers, the form team of the comp, probably up there in the top 3 or 4 across most of the different versions of the competition. So well done, JT, absolutely killing it. How'd you go, mate? Obviously, by the sound of your voice, you went pretty well off the field. How did the teams go on it?
Yeah, and just before we talk about my teams, we did get to catch up with JT. He's obviously living over in New Zealand and flew over for Magic Round, so we did get to catch up with him at the Caxton on Friday night. And him, as well as all the GDS boys, were in some fine form, so it was good to catch up with them and share a bit of a drink and a laugh with them. Yeah, round 9, no top 20 finishes again for me, but continue to nudge just that little bit closer to the season-long top 20. So I think I'm behind that 20th ranked team by less than 200 points in starter, classic, and champ. So there's not too much difference there. I just need a couple of good pods and probably another couple of those good weeks, like you said, for the previous round. The key, though, for me, though, is I did win my GDS matchup. I did win the GDS Cup matchup. So I am now into that final 8. So it's starting to get a bit nerve-wracking. There's a few names there that I'm a little bit nervous to come up against because, as you said, Fire Breathers, for example, is the form team at the moment. But fortunately, I'm not playing them this week, which is a bit of luck for me. But I am just 3 wins away from obtaining that prize card. So I'm really looking forward to the next 3 weeks of footy.
And I feel like that would be a win for not just you, but for the Fantasy Bros as well. That is unreal, mate. Absolutely flying there. Well done. Looking forward to that matchup there. And we'll have a look at your squad a little bit later on as well and see who your opponent might be. So, guys, if you want some expert advice and to see if Dill progresses even further into the GDS Cup, of course, we'll be coming live to you every Wednesday night. So make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's Fantasy Bros AU on YouTube so that you don't miss a thing. If you haven't already, make sure you jump over onto our TikTok and our Instagram as well. We're going to be dropping some pods of the week. Dill obviously needs to get a little bit spicy to make up that 200 points that he's behind that 20th placed player at the moment. So he'll certainly be looking for some of the bigger pods of the week, and I'll be naming mine as well. So keep an eye out for that. And the more socials you're on, the more chance you are of winning a couple of packs or cards from us. We've been giving away multiple cards each and every week, and I think we've got a bit of a special card to give away a little bit later on, don't we, Dill?
Yes, we do. And before we do that, we have Melissa Mel's Misfits in the chat. She is coming to us all the way from France today. That's unreal, Mel. Thank you for the commitment.
Thanks.
Looking forward to the chat coming from you over there. And Sif Kanga, yeah, it looks like we have 2 stews in the Fantasy Bros this week. My chat name does say Stu, so I'll have to fix that one up, mate. Thanks for pointing that out, Sif.
We wanted to support the Raiders on the weekend, and now he wants to steal my name as well.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. Look, it's not too late to get involved as well. If you're just tuning in for the first time, you've stumbled across us either on any of our socials and you've just heard about Game Day Squad, it's really easy to get involved. You simply download the app or visit the Game Day Squad website, create your account, super easy to do. Use our promo code FBRL25 and you'll get 3 9-player common packs straight up. So you'll be able to rip those straight away. And it's a bit like the old school footy cards. You rip those packs and you check out some of your favorite players, and you then obviously the difference here is you can use them in a fantasy competition and you can win plenty of cash and pack prizes each week. There are thousands of dollars that the Game Day Squad boys give away, and that is each and every round. So even if you're getting in now in round 10, you've still got plenty of opportunity to win some big cash and pack prizes. And there's nothing like opening a couple of packs and finding an unreal player like Diamond Cleary in a common pack or something like that. It's the feeling is amazing. So those people that are just tuning in, as I said, go over, do that now, invite your friends, get along. It's heaps of fun, heaps of trading and banter that goes on as well in the Discord. So make sure you get yourself over there. Stu, for those that are new to the show, what's our plan today? What do we usually go through on our Wednesday night show?
Yeah, quick shout out to AC as well. I was there live. You were as well at the James Tedesco launch event where AC ripped open a common and got that Diamond Cleary. That was absolutely something very special. Yeah, mate, as always, we'll go through position by position and run through who we think the best players for the round are. We'll reveal our all bronze starter squads, so the team that you'll be putting into that quarterfinal of the GDS Cup. And of course, our fans, our viewers will have the opportunity to win some pretty special cards thanks to the Bro Down Showdown segment. Yes. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah, definitely. Look, and as mentioned, the GDS Cup round 6 has been completed, and we're down to that final 8. The GDS boys notified everyone today and also sent out their 3 by 9 player rare codes for winning that. So we're now down to the final 8. So you can see the matchups on screen. You can also see that Big Horse got the score of the round. He scored 12.33, and his opponent, our mate Scrambled Legs, unfortunately, he scored 11.98 but was beaten. So he was beaten by the top score. So that's super unfortunate for our mate. But it just goes to show that you can make it all the way through to something like round 6 of the GDS Cup, only just starting this season with just the starter cards that you get when you first sign up, as well as doing a few trades here and there. So there's a really good opportunity for people that are just getting in now. There's still plenty of chances to win. And it looks like I've got the Waddlers up this week, so that'll be really interesting. I haven't really seen that name around before, so it's great to see someone like Waddlers and Circus Crew there that we haven't really seen around before. It's awesome to see they're still in the hunt. Alrighties. Now, normally we wouldn't cover team news. We obviously jump on a Wednesday night and everyone sort of has an opportunity to go through teams on a Tuesday and have a look at some ins and outs. But because we're coming to you a couple of hours after those teams have dropped, we thought we'd go through some of the more important team news coming out of round 10. Stu, mate, we've got some key ins and outs there. Talk us through some of the big names.
Yeah, absolutely. Got some really big names coming back in the form of Jaden Campbell, who's had 3 or 4 weeks out. So the Titans definitely need a spark in their attack. They've definitely got to do something about their defense, but he'll certainly help them get some points on the board, you would have to think. The Bunnies have a couple of nice inclusions as well through Humphreys and Latrell Mitchell. Looks like Jai Gray has moved back to the interchange bench at the moment. Wouldn't be surprised if there's maybe a couple of changes and see Gray maybe slotting in the back line somewhere. He's been in red hot form. He was leading the Dally M for about 7 or 8 weeks, and some of the try-saving tackles that he made on the weekend as a bit of a last-ditched effort was quite incredible. We see Matty Burton return for the Doggies, and a big name there as well, Brian To'o, back for the Panthers. They finally sort of found a bit of form there, knocking off the Broncos at Suncorp Stadium, and quite convincingly as well. So have they turned the corner? Maybe. They would certainly love that inclusion there of Brian To'o. A couple of big outs. JMK was a bit of a hooker option for a lot of coaches. He's obviously dealing with a couple of injuries at the moment. He's been given the week off again. And so make sure if you're thinking about playing JMK, you're removing him from your squad. Same with Peter Mamazelas. He'll be out for at least a a couple of weeks as well. But that hooker position was already pretty thin. It gets a lot thinner now, doesn't it? We're also waiting on some news out of the judiciary this evening. Jacob Preston's there looking to have a 3 or 4 match ban overturned. They're fighting it, and there's every chance he gets that overturned, that crusher tackle on Tino. But if he doesn't get that overturned, he's also missing out on Origin 1. If he was any shot of making the Blues team, he'll be rubbed out of contention for that. So a lot to play for there at the judiciary for the Dogs. You must think that they've got a pretty decent case, and we'll try to get an update as soon as we can, as soon as we hear, to let you know if Jacob Preston is someone that you should put in your squads or you should get rid of him. But still on that ins list, 5 pretty handy names that have all featured in our Game Day squad team at some point this season. Who are you most excited about maybe this week or over the next couple of weeks in that in column?
Yeah, it's probably not this week because I'd like to see just how he slots back in. But definitely for future is obviously Jaden Campbell. We saw what he did through the first few games of the season, averaging 66 GS points. And I think he had 285 or 87 games in there as well. So we know he's got some really explosive upside and is kicking goals when he's healthy. So it just comes down to sort of how he slots back in. And there's obviously a lot going on at the Titans at the moment, with David Fafita being indefinitely dropped and a few other things happening there as well. And they obviously need to find some form. And we know that they can light it up when it all comes together. But I think I just want to give it a week or two just to see how Campbell slots back in. And then also there's that looming player, on the sidelines at the moment, and Kieran Foran and what his inclusion might look like over the next couple of weeks. But that's definitely someone I'm keeping my eye on. The other one that it's probably a bit of a sad time to see is Brian To'o coming in. It's actually pushed Thomas Jenkins out of the side, and he's currently got the 19 on his back after just having probably one of the best games of his life at Magic Round. He was just absolutely unreal in everything, and everything that he touched just turned to absolute magic. And he's now being pushed out of the side because Brian To'o comes back in. So it's a bit of a shame there. He could have been on a few coaches' minds if To'o wasn't named, but you never know. Those late ins, late outs, sort of an hour before kickoff might change a few coaches as well.
Yeah, you'd have to think he offers maybe a bit more in that back line than Luke Gardner in the centres. But hey, who are we? We're not rugby league coaches, and certainly not 4-time premiership winning coaches either. So I'm sure Ivan knows what he's doing. You want to get cracking into the positional breakdown, Dill?
Let's do it. Obviously, we start off with a hooker position, and it's just a pretty simple one for me this week. I'm just going to play super safe and play Blake Brayley. We obviously had a bit of a nudge on both Reece Robson, and we talked about Wade Egan last week, and they probably had 2 of their worst games against each other. Unfortunately, it was just where the footy wasn't conducive to the hooker play, and unfortunately that didn't pay off for us. So Blake Brayley for me is probably just, look, it's probably a little bit like spaghetti bolognese, really. Nothing fancy, just gets the job done. Your mum bought out spaghetti bolognese, you weren't really complaining too much. And I think that's probably what you get from Blake Brayley. And in terms of his performance, he's going to rack up those 50 points in base stats. And that's through pretty much mostly his tackles and then a few run meters on top there. And we know he can limit demerits. So if he does that, I think you run away with your 50 points and be happy with it for the hooker position.
Yeah, spot on. Also, nothing wrong with spaghetti bolognese, mate.
100%.
This is coming from a fussy eater as well. But yeah, look, maybe Blake Brayley for me as well, just because the hooker position is so boring. And, unless a player is darting over, scoring a try or two, we're seeing a ceiling of about, a mid 55 score for the best hooker each week. We're even seeing a heap of mid 30s and, low 40s from a lot of these big name hookers as well. So look, Reece Robson had a couple of nice matches in a row. He came back down to earth a little bit in the game just gone. He gets the Panthers this weekend. So, might be a tough outing for him as well. I think you've nailed it, mate. The Spag Bowl pick in Blake Brayley. We know what we're going to get. It's 50 points, generally through 53 or 4 tackles and 1 or 2 miss. Look, any attack that he can conjure up, whether it's darting out a dummy half or, throwing a short ball to one of the big boys close to the line, then we will take it. Look, Wade Egan, his days of an 80-minute hooker might be close to over, at least in the short term anyway. Sam Healy played really well, although they shared the field at one point. He's obviously a gun hooker as well. Wade Egan's got his long list of injury complications. So it wouldn't surprise me to see, Egan's minutes go down a little bit and keep him fresh for the first 60 minutes or so of each match. But yeah, look, the hooker position, pretty boring. Let's get the spag bowl out.
Yeah, I love it. Just on the one other option potentially, I see we've got Damien Cook there, but people might look at Jacob Little's score over the weekend and be pretty interested in him. But look, to be honest, you just don't know what you're going to get. He's sort of all over the shop with his minutes, and I think he's averaging about 34. And really, the only upside from last game was his 2 tries that he dotted over for. So you just can't trust in someone like Little. And we talked about Damien Cook last week and how we can't really trust his minutes share either. And I think just like we said, Blake Brayley plays 80 minutes, just lock and load him and be done with it.
5 tries for Jacob Little in probably an average of 30 or so minutes per match. Yeah. Ridiculous. Great strike rate, great for the Dragons, but probably not so much for our GameDay squads. As soon as we put him in, you'll probably get that single digit or sub 20 score. Right, mate, hooker's pretty boring. Happy to move on to the middles? Yeah,
definitely. Yep. Now, obviously, middles, I think it's pretty much set and forget. We say it most weeks. Haas, May, and Yo are just the men of consistency. They're topping the averages. They're topping the scoring for middles. I think it's pretty much set and forget. From there, I guess the dilemma comes to playing your 4th middle or playing 4 edges even. We know we've talked about playing the 3 edges. We've obviously changed our tactic a bit around playing 5 middles. I don't think there's 5 consistent middles that we can play. But if you are looking at a 4th, I guess there's a few options. AFB, King, McInnes, Carrigan, Tarpanay, they're all sort of averaging around 50 to 55, and they all have upside. They all have downside as well, and we've seen that at some stage this season. We've seen that they've all got a couple of down games. Adam Fanua-Blake is reduced minutes. Obviously, we saw King have 2 down games after his massive 80-odd performance. So I think for me, I'm going to just stick with a little bit of consistency here and maybe a bit of a positive matchup and go with the Haas-Carrigan combination up front against the Rabbitohs. I'm a little bit nervous. I've said it a few times on the pod, loading up on a team in a clear positive matchup and putting quite a number of my eggs into that one basket and it just being thrown back in my face. I'm a little bit nervous about that, but I think Haas and Carrigan can score individually and independently of each other, and I think they can score quite well. Obviously, Payne Haas has that bigger upside. So, I think I'm going to lean on Carrigan this week in my starter, and then maybe potentially have 4 edges in some of the other competitions. Maybe I'll just stick with the 3 middles. The good thing, I guess, is the Knights middles averaged 51, the Storm middles averaged 40, and the 40 and 46 GDS points against the Bunnies over the last 3 weeks. So there's some clear upside there. And Max King also had his blow-up game against them 2 weeks ago. So there's some upside. But as we talked about as well, they've got some key men back. So it'll just be interesting to see how that goes.
Yeah, don't mind the Carrigan shout. I had a bit of a look into Payne Haas's numbers a little bit closely in terms of, against certain opposition, difficult matches, easy matches, and he's got about a 6 or 7 point difference in his average. It's a lot higher, 6 or 7 points against the teams in which the Broncos lose, and it's a little bit lower by 6 or 8 points in the matches that the Broncos win. So when you look at those stats, it's also a little bit cloudy because his biggest score has also come from a loss, and his lowest score has come from a loss as well. But the averages in wins versus losses do tell a bit of a story. When the Broncos are chasing the game, Haas is sort of thrown in there and just told to run and to offload and to do as best as he can, really. But when they're in front, he stays on the bench for a little bit longer. He doesn't really need to look to promote the ball. He just needs to wrap it up, go to ground, and get a nice clean roll ball. So with the matchup here for the Broncos, in a match that they really should win, we know that the Bunnies obviously have a few handy players coming back, but it's probably a bit of distance between these two teams at the moment. There's every chance that someone like Payne Haas gets a little bit more time on the bench. Now, I'm not saying I'm ever going to sit Payne Haas, but does the same happen with Paddy Carrigan, or does Paddy Carrigan pick up some of that extra work that Payne Haas might not necessarily have if the game's put to bed? We know that the Origin period is coming up, So we know that would be in the back of the mind of a lot of these Broncos forwards and their coach as well. Whether or not Paddy Carrigan keeps his, sort of 72, 75 minutes, I'm not so sure, but he's certainly looking like someone who's going to pick up some of the slack if Payne Haas does take some minutes, some extra minutes off the field, particularly if the game is put to bed. So I really like that shout of Paddy Carrigan. I'm almost leaning only the 3 middles, but I'm really warming to your man and Aaron Clark. His minutes over the last 3 weeks have gone from 60 to 64 to 69. So obviously trending in the right direction, and he's been an absolute workhorse beast. He's making plenty of tackles, and then the game just gone. He ran for 204 meters. We know he's capable of a bit of a cheeky offload, and he'll throw that little short ball or no-look ball close to the line to a big forward as well. And he's every chance of an attacking stat. He's really only got the 1 try assist this year, but if you look at his numbers over the past 3 weeks, they're pretty impressive alongside the likes of Paddy Carrigan, or even slightly better in terms of the workload there as well. So, yeah, if I'm looking at a 4th middle, I might look in the direction of Aaron Clark, but I might also look to pivot and play the 4 edge forwards, and we'll obviously cover a few of those names in the next segment.
Yeah, and just on Aaron Clark, I don't know why, but I had in my head that he was prone to an error and a penalty and a bit of a brain snap every now and then. But having a look at his stats, he's actually the opposite. He's only had 1 penalty given away this season, and he's only had 4 errors. So, yeah, I don't know why I had that in my head, and that was sort of keeping me away from Clark over the last couple of weeks. But, yeah, I think he's definitely a play. And like you said, that increased minutes, so it's almost doubled from his average of last season when he was over at the Titans there. So I think, yeah, plenty of upside for Aaron Clark as long as he sees those minutes on the field. And maybe he's taking on more of that Adam Fanor-Blake type role and rolling up his sleeves and giving a lot of go forward for the Warriors. So it's good to see. And maybe that's the Warriors winning off the back of him as well, which is awesome.
Yeah, so Sif Kanga is on the same sort of train of thought there. He's thinking about saying 3 mids and Aaron Clark on the bench as well, particularly while James Fisher-Harris is out. Yeah, he's sort of really becoming that leader in that forward pack. And Sif Kanga, we know that he's a big Warriors man, and if he's backing Aaron Clark in, then I shall too.
All right, let's jump over to middles. And as you said, you're starting to lean towards maybe playing 4 middles. Obviously, as most people know here, but anyone new, you've got 2 edges on the field, and then you've got 2 forward bench spots where you can play any combination of hooker, middle, or edge. And so you're starting to lean towards those 4 edges. Where are you thinking of going? Obviously, Toby Couchman, I think, is probably the key one that's a must start. From there, who are you sort of looking at?
All right, I've just got hot off the press some breaking news regarding Jacob Preston at the judiciary. I have a quick prediction on did he get off or has he been charged?
I think he's fought it and he's won, and so he's back.
Bulldog star Jacob Preston has been found guilty of a grade 1 crusher tackle. He's now been suspended for 4 matches, so that'll rule him out of New South Wales selection for State of Origin 1. There you go, people listening, people on our live stream. You have just heard the news first of all. So get Jacob Preston out of your teams. He won't be in there for the next 4 weeks. So, Dill, that might make things in the edge forward role maybe a little bit easier. I'm not sure, but Preston was obviously a bit of a staple for us in our sides. But yeah, with a red line through him now for the next 4 weeks, it really means that we can maybe start looking at a pot or 2. I know you're talking about some spicy takes, particularly in the backs, but let's see if we can't find 1 or 2 in the edge forwards. Look, Toby Couchman has been Mr. Reliable over the last few weeks. Unfortunately, his minutes have sort of ebbed and flowed. They've been up and down. There hasn't really been too much consistency over those minutes. In saying that, he's still pumping out just over a point a minute as well. He has been sort of holding his knee and then again his elbow or shoulder on the weekend just gone. So he's obviously fighting through a little bit of pain, but he's an absolute workhorse as well. We can play him on the edge forward position and we can get his reliable 55 to 60 with plenty of upside as well if there's some minutes, and he's definitely offloading, tackle breaking, and he's broken the line a couple of times as well. So even though the minutes aren't really quite where we really want them on a consistent basis, I think he's pretty reliable, and I'm happy to lock and load him in there. With the red line through Preston, I'm going to look elsewhere for maybe a spicy pot or two. You're going to hear a bit of a theme over a lot of my choices over the next few positions, and particularly the backs later on, but it's going to be the Newcastle Knights players. Now, a cheat code moving forward might be simply scrolling across the NRL.com fixtures and looking for the Titans logo and seeing who they're coming up against each and every week, because they're absolutely leaking so many points across both sides of the field. So I think this is a match in which Newcastle can really capitalise. I think the Bunnies played them back into form last week. Their attack was awful over the previous month or so, and having a nice run against the New South Wales Cup side in the Rabbitohs has played them back to a bit of form and got some shape ticking along nicely there as well. So I know that you're a big fan of Dylan Lucas. There's no secret that a lot of us will be playing Dylan Lucas, so he's a big in for me. But mate, I'm thinking of giving Kai, Pierce-Paul or KPP a run in my team as well. Yes, I know that's two Knights back rowers, one on the left and one on the right side of the field. But look, Kai Pierce-Paul has been just as good as Dylan Lucas over the last couple of matches as well. He actually scored the same score of 61 in the weekend just gone, and he didn't even have any attacking stats. And I think Dylan Lucas had the line break and try assist there as well. So KPP has been getting through plenty of base. KPP did have that one line break down the right-hand side compared to Dylan Lucas's try assist, line break assist. But look, the Titans are leaking across the entire field, whether it's on the left or the right, it doesn't really matter. And KPP's been playing really, really well lately. He's matching Dylan Lucas even when Lucas is scoring some attack. We know that Dylan Lucas has greater upside with attack just because the Knights move the ball to the left so often. But when they make half a break down the left, what does that mean? It's normally a 2 or 3 pass shift to the right. And if you see Kai Pierce-Paul out there against a small forward, you're obviously going to give him the ball and say, hey, run over that little bloke there. So against the Titans, where plenty of points are going to be scored, I think he can get amongst those points. And interestingly, he does have 0 offloads in the past 2 matches. He actually threw 5 of them in round 7 before those 2 zeros, which, is a bit surprising, a bit interesting. I'm not sure if he's been told to put it away or he just hasn't really found himself in a position to do so. But look, if he can add a couple of offloads back into the game as well, with a big chance of some attacking upside this round, for me, I think he's one of the better forward pods of the weekend. Any thoughts on KPP, mate?
Yeah, I really like that call, and I think you touched on it there. The Titans are allowing points to both sides of the field for that edge position. They're giving up an average of 50 on both right and left sides to edge position forward. So I think you could go both of them quite easily and expect that there should be some points scored on both sides of the field for both Lucas and KPP. So, yeah, I think it's obviously a risk. We always talk about that, playing 2 players in the same position, just on opposite side of the field, plus loading up with a few other players that we'll talk about a little bit later on around the Knights. But it's definitely a risk that has some upside and has some reward there. And it's probably one of the safer risks, I think, that you could play based on some of the options that we have. One of the risks that I think people might be playing is something similar to Sif Kanga, where he is playing Fermor in his edge position with then Lucas and Couchman. What do you reckon about Fermor? He's coming off 2 tries, and then the week before he had another big score as well. And I think over the last 3 games, he's averaging almost 80 points. But before that, we saw him sort of around the 20s and 30s. What do you reckon about Beau Fermor moving forward?
His last couple of performances seem to be a bit of an outlier, don't they? Obviously, the 3 tries in 2 matches. He also got 2 try assists and a couple of line break assists and that sort of thing in the previous match as well when he topped 100 points. I don't think that he's able to keep that up. We saw Hudson Young's unbelievable run of a double 3 matches in a row.
Yep.
He sort of came back to earth a little bit with that high 40s against the Storm, which was probably expected. But look, Fermor's really struggling before that with those scores in the sort of 30s and low 40s as well. Without even then, he still had a try and a try assist in some of those smaller scores as well. So I don't think it's anything different that the Titans are doing. I don't think Fermor's all of a sudden become one of the best edge forwards in the game. I think maybe it's just a bit more of look, someone's got to roll their sleeves up, and we know that he competes for the 80 minutes. With Jaden Campbell back, I think the ball is going to be in his hands a little bit more often. Whether or not that means that, he's obviously going to be on the right side of the field, whether or not that means that Fermor is going to get the same amount of opportunity. Campbell obviously goes both sides of the field, but he's probably more on that dominant right side with Brimson there on the left. So, yeah, look, you can't deny that Fermor's in a lot of form, and anyone that backs him to go again could well be rewarded. But look, I didn't even look at him this round just gone after the big century against the Cowboys. I expected him to come back down to earth, and he sort of got bailed out with those 2 late tries. And good score, but yeah, I'm going to look elsewhere, particularly when I think that there's going to be plenty of points put on this team, and they won't be amongst the points too much themselves.
Yeah, I think I'm the same. Look, we've got someone commenting here. Looks like a new name. I haven't really seen it before. Epic Eka 10. He's going with Lucas and KPP, so he's all over that night shout that you said, which I love. Look, from here, I guess the other player that I'm looking at then is obviously Hudson Young, and I feel like he's just starting to become a pretty consistent player. We obviously saw those big scores in rounds 5, 6, and 7, where he bagged those double as you talked about. However, outside those 3, he's still averaging 53 GDS points, and it's all being pretty much done through his base stats. So he's obviously got that upside. We've talked about his speed, we've talked about his agility, and we've talked about his ability to break tackles. But then if you're averaging 45 in base with that upside, I think it's just a no-brainer. Obviously, with Preston now out for 4 weeks, that I think the Hudson Young call is even more solidified in my head, that I'm just going to keep going back to the well there and keep making sure that I'm looking for Hudson Young every time I build my side. The downside, I guess, with Huddy is that he's missed an average of 2.5 tackles per game, which, it's not as many as some of the other players that we might talk about, but it's still something that we've got to consider as well, that he needs to really get those demerits down. And if he does, I feel like he might even cash in against the Dogs' right edge. That, Jake Preston's now not there, so what will that look like? When he was there, they're still averaging 48 GDS points with Preston the side to left edges. So without Preston, who knows how vulnerable they could be. So I think, Huddy Young's got a pretty good opportunity to maybe run over the top of someone and score some points.
Yeah, the Raiders certainly target that side of the field with, Hudson Young anyway. And with the new combination out there on the right with Preston out, it's definitely going to be another, focal point of the attack for the Raiders as well. So there's going to be some new defensive partnerships out there.
Yeah.
We might see Salmon moving out there as a full-time edge, and Kurt Mann moving into the lock role. There's really not anyone sort of jumping out on their bench or their extended that is an out-and-out solid edge forward, and certainly nowhere near as good as Jacob Preston. So there's every chance that Hutto sees more ball, but also much better attacking opportunities as well. It's a much better play now that Preston's not on that team sheet. We saw that the Storm, great defensive outfit. Hudson Young still just under 50 points. It would have been probably the same sort of story here against the Dogs with their, really impressive defense. But with the new edge combination between the right edge and a half in Sexton, there's obviously going to be some sort of, lapses or miscommunication at some point, given that, Preston's been there all season, or at least, Curran's been able to fill in there as well. But Curran's obviously still out as well. That would have been a nice replacement for them. But look, it might be Jamin Salmon, and if so, that's going to be a nice matchup for Hudson Young.
100%. Yeah, I agree. Look, we've just got one more question here that I wanted to talk about, and it's regarding Leo Thompson, and Epic Eka has put forward. What are your thoughts on Leo Thompson for the Knights? And it's someone that I always sort of have a look at and sort of just pass over his name and sort of move on. And I guess for me, the issue is his minutes, and they're sort of all over the shop at the moment. He's averaging 54, but he's played a game of 35, a game of 72. And generally when it's around sort of that 50 mark, he's close to averaging 1 point per minute, which I really like. And that's what I really like to see from middles, is they're getting that point per minute. But I want us to probably see 60 minutes plus from someone like Leo Thompson if I'm going to look at it seriously playing him over someone like a Max King or even Aaron Clark, who we talked about before. I want to see that consistency of minutes. And at the moment, like I said, it's sort of all over the place. And then as a result, his scores are sort of all over the place. He's had some great 55s plus, but then he's also had a couple of 35s in there as well. So I just don't know what I'm going to get with someone like Leo Thompson. Is there anything else you want to add there, mate?
Oh, call me a casual, but maybe I just haven't really looked at Leo Thompson. Maybe it's because he's, in a position where there's so many reliable guns that are pumping out, mid 50s and 60s before attacking stats. But his numbers are pretty impressive when when it looks like he's aiming up and playing some footy and getting some good minutes. He just pumped out 4 offloads, and his previous 8 games he'd only had 2 offloads combined. So if he's adding that to his game and he's getting that 60 minutes and breaking a couple of tackles with his 120 odd meters with 4 or 5 offloads per game, he could be in that sort of discussion around Aaron Clark and Paddy Carrigan. But I'd want to see more of it. Certainly not a name that I've been looking at too often, just given the high quality of players around him in that middle forward position.
Yeah. Alrighty, let's jump into the halves, and it's pretty similar reading and discussing. I think for most of us, we're sort of sticking with the Cleary-Hines combination, and just on Cleary, he is just an absolute freak on the field. If anyone was doubting Nathan Cleary as the GOAT, just go and watch that game from the weekend against the Broncos. That try that he scored, just exactly the same, mirrored that grand final try from a couple of years ago. And the best part, it was right in front of me. So I got to celebrate with Nathan Cleary, which I would never normally do. But if it's against the Broncos, I'm happy to do that. I think, there's just a no-brainer. Play Nathan Cleary. Doesn't matter what the matchup is. He's going to score you points in a win, in a loss. It doesn't really matter. The second one there is Nicho Hynes. And there's probably an argument there for potentially might be the week that we don't play Nicho Hynes. Are you starting to think that might be the case here for you? Because there's a couple of other big names, or are we still just going to play it pretty safe?
Yeah, I am. I'm putting some notes together earlier. It was sort of, Hynes half, lock and load, move on to the next position. But I've sat down and thought about it a bit more. I think there's a couple of options that might be not necessarily safer, but probably come with a bit more of an upside or ceiling. And for me, that's Adam Reynolds there with the Broncos against the Rabbitohs. I know the Rabbitohs concede more points to the left side of the field, or the left half in particular. But look, Adam Reynolds is just, he's the conductor of that Broncos outfit. If he wants the ball to go left, he'll make sure it does. But when he gets it in his hand, he's got, one of the best kicking games in the competition. He'll pin the opposition back close to their line. He's definitely capable of some 40-20, some forced drops. And generally, where there's a try being scored, he's got his fingerprints over it in some way. He then obviously kicks some goals as well. And if we're expecting the Bronx to, sort of put in a showing after that pretty poor performance against the Panthers up there on their home turf in Magic Round, we'll probably expect plenty of tries and therefore goal attempts for Reynolds and the Broncos. He obviously does carry a few injuries, and he clutches that shoulder every now and then, and he's gone down with the knee and that sort of thing. So you always sort of cringe, and hopefully he gets back up on his feet. So there's always that little bit of concern. So I wouldn't really look to play him in many fixtures, but when there's a pretty juicy one there against a vulnerable Rabbitohs team that are, probably a little bit better on paper than they have been over the last few weeks, I still think there's a good opportunity for some points there. And he's obviously going to be involved in that in some way, shape or form. So for me, it's Reynolds, Hynes, and maybe Metcalf for the last 2 spots, obviously, alongside Cleary. I know, look, XRP, JT, a few of those boys that topped the leaderboards this round, certainly played Metcalf, and they enjoyed his 103-point outing, which was incredible. Before that, he'd had scores of 73 and 51, and he's really enjoying that playmaking role there for the Flying Wars. Who would have thought they are 3rd up there on the ladder, just behind the Raiders after what they dished out in Vegas, a couple of months ago. Look, the matchup with the Dragons isn't awful, but I think I might, look, if I don't play him this round, probably going to be the guy I look to when the Wires are playing at home. There's always a little bit of emotion there, and they just seem to put together a bit more of a nice performance there at home. They were basically at home there on the weekend up at Suncorp, were they? I think the Warriors won that weekend in terms of fandom. They were just outstanding, weren't they? So that was a home game there, I think, for Metcalf. That's why he scored his 103. Look, I think the Hynes matchup is pretty tough there against Manly, off the bye, at Brookie. Look, a down game from the Sharks and Hynes wouldn't surprise. So, long answer short, this might be the week I look to pivot away from Hines and look at someone like a Reynolds and Metcalf.
Yeah, I like it, and that's probably a bit of a big call as well. I think a lot of coaches will probably want to play it safe, and someone like Hines, that's something that I certainly will be doing, and maybe that's not quite what I should be focusing on when I need to catch up by 200 or so points. But again, I'm just nervous about chasing last week's points in Metcalf. He obviously had a couple of tries there that boosted that 103. Yeah. And like you said, he's sort of got a rolling 3-game average of 75, which is awesome. But the 5 games before that, he's sitting around at 42. So there's obviously some downside. And if he has a low game, his low game, which we saw against the Raiders to start the season, was 14, which, obviously he wasn't in that game at all. And he can bounce back pretty well. But yeah, when there's a low game of 14 and there's some probably some more upside in a few players, it might be something that I'm looking at. But I'll probably have to eat my words there, and Metcalf will probably have another massive game to keep the Warriors at the top end of the table. So yeah, good on you. I love that call. I think
it's Metcalves, according to Sif Kanger, and he certainly has been carving up, hasn't he? I like that.
Love it. Look, there's plenty of other options though in that third half spot. We've got potentially the combination of Moses and Brown in the Eels up against the Dolphins. We've got Munster and Hughes that either one of them or both of them might have a big game. DCE's got a pretty juicy matchup as well. As you mentioned, Reynolds. Fogarty looks like he's got a pretty good matchup too this week, up against the Bulldogs there. DCE up against the Sharks. The Sharks have allowed 54 to right halves. Fogarty, as I said, up against the Dogs, they've allowed 53 to right halves. And then the Storm, the 2 boys at the Storm, the Tigers have allowed 39 to the left and 46 to the right. So there's plenty of upside there for all of those players. But I think I'm just going to stick with my man from last week and just play Mitchell Moses again. I'm just going to give him one more shot. It wasn't like he had a poor game. He had a pretty decent game, and sort of that gamble. There wasn't really any upside or downside to it. I think he scored 50 points and Fogarty might have got 51 or 49 and 50, whatever it was. There was only sort of a point between them. So I was pretty happy playing Moses there. I didn't really miss out on much. And playing him this week up against the Dolphins, the Dolphins have had some unreal games and they've had some really poor games this season. And you just don't know what Dolphins team you're going to get. Obviously, JMK's out still. There's a couple of other changes there. Donahue coming in, as well as who was the other player? There was one more player, and I can't think of him right now. But I think that the matchup looks favourable for Moses, and I think the Dolphins allowing an average of 50 GDS points to right side halves. I think I might just lock him in there. That's ranking them 4th up against that position, and just lock him in and hope that he has some attacking upside, and then maybe he might be given the kicking duties back as well. I think that's going to be the big key and the big watch for me, and hopefully he's had a couple of weeks there where he's just eased back into his footy, and Sean Russell, he's had some good shots at goal and he's had some not so good shots at goal. So maybe they just want a little bit more consistency in Mitch Moses.
Yeah, I don't mind that. Dolphins certainly are giving a bit of points to halves there. We saw Hugo Savala get his first try assist of the season there against the Dolphins just last round there at Magic Round, and he looked quite good there. And yeah, Moses is definitely a quality player, and he just needs those kicking duties back, doesn't he? If there's any confirmation that he's got the T, that sort of puts that extra 9, 12, maybe 15 points on his score on a good day, and then he rockets straight into calculation for a lot of us. But until I see that, I think there are plenty of good options, like you've mentioned. And look, they're probably all going to average within maybe 5 or 10 of each other. It just depends, can you get the right one or not? I'm really surprised that you said Fogarty's average, right-sided halves averaging 53 against the Dogs. That is surprising for me, given that, we see the Dogs as, such a really good defensive unit. They've kept a couple of teams scoreless and plenty of teams scoreless, at least in one half of rugby league, but the halves are still scoring 53 points on the right-hand side there. So, yeah, Sif Kanger, I had the same thoughts, mate, that Fogs might have had a tough matchup against the Dogs. The stats don't necessarily say that, but a bit of a psychological thing for me. I don't think, the Raiders are going to attack too well against the Dogs, unless it's down the left-hand side there with Hudson taking on that replacement edge forward. But yeah, I think I'm going to look elsewhere on some halves this round. Just keep Cleary from last week and get a couple of fresh faces in there for this round.
Yeah, nice. All righty, let's move on to the centres. And look, I'm going to kick us off here. My Cobbo experiment kind of paid off last week. Obviously, if you went the way of my pot of the week over someone like Val Holmes, you probably missed out on maybe 6 or 8 points there. So there wasn't too much difference. But if you played him instead of someone like Iro or Meany, I think there was some benefit there. There was definitely some upside. So I was pretty happy with how Cobbo went, scoring 64 against that red hot Panthers side that probably played the best game of their season last week. And Cobbo still came away with 64 points. He had a couple of line breaks. And he looked to be involved at certain points in the game, but there was also some attacking opportunities where the Broncos had the ball at the line and sort of Cobbo never touched it. They sort of went away from him or played the short ball or whatever it might have been. So it's good to see that Cobbo is able to score so well in a game where they didn't win and they got blown off the park, and he didn't seem like he was as involved as normal. And then obviously they're coming up against the Rabbitohs, who have allowed an average of 60 GDS points to fullbacks this season, which has them topping the table, topping the leaderboard for points against fullbacks. So I think he's got every opportunity to do the same thing he did last week and go to that 60-point average again. Nothing's going right for the Rabbitohs. They've obviously got some key men back, but how does the change of Latrell going to fullback and Jai Gray going off? You touched on how good Jai Gray's been, particularly at those try savers. He just, for a little bloke, he just has some unreal strength and power to be able to turn blokes at the line or even over the line. So, yeah, it'd be interesting to see how that matchup sort of goes. And I feel like maybe that the Broncos will want to avenge that pretty poor loss at home against the Panthers. So, I think they're going to have a big game against the Rabbitohs, and I think Cobbo is going to be a big part of that. And he might even be pushing for that origin spot at the back that's pretty open at the moment. Obviously, KP's got, maybe one hand on that jersey, but I don't think he's got two yet. So there's a few decent options in what that fullback role might look like for Queensland.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a big bounce back here for the Bronx. They would have been pretty embarrassed, waiting till the very last fixture of Magic Round to, put on that sort of disappointing game against, obviously the Panthers, but still, bottom of the table. So, Cobbo was outstanding. So, yeah, he definitely gets the nod this week with a much, easier matchup on paper. We saw KP and the Knights, ran rings around the Bunnies. So I expect the Bronx and Cobbo to do something similar. In that 64, he really only had that one line break. He was a tireless worker all night, and he actually gassed himself so much. He spent a bit of time on the wing as well, just to sort of get his breath back, and wasn't really involved in the game, for a period of time then as well. So hopefully with that run under his belt, he's a little bit fitter and ready to go again with another score over 60. Certainly wouldn't surprise. Mate, this is 1 week I'm considering not even going Herbie Farnworth as a 1 or 2 centre. Obviously, we've got Cobbo in there. I'm actually looking at Bradman Best and Cobbo over Herbie Farnworth. We know that Herbie is fixture proof. Things haven't really been clicking for the Dolphins of late. They obviously were up by 18 points over the Raiders a couple of weeks ago and then lost that matchup by 12. Herbie was on about 40 odd GDS points at halftime and ended up on about 54 or something. So, even last week he scored a nice try as well, but still only got that mid-50 score. So he's still certainly capable, scoring plenty of tries. He's still got the fourth most tackle breaks in the competition. But I just want to take advantage of some matchups this weekend, and I've spoken about plenty of Knights players, and Bradman Best has a really nice matchup here on paper as well. I think the Titans give up 55 GDS points to all left centres this year, and we know that the Knights are left side dominant. They're playing at home. KP, Lucas, Marju, all in a bit of form. Sharp, obviously, as well, around Bradman Best. And look, if I'm going to play 3 or 4 of them anyway, why not just play an extra one and put Bradman Best in there as well? So even if Marju's not in my lineup, spoiler, every chance is that it's either Ponga, Lucas, Sharp, or Best that throws in the ball for at least a try assist if Marju does find the line. But Best has been awesome carrying the ball out of his own half. He's flicking the ball out the corner of his pocket to Marju. He's going to ground and offloading. He's got tremendous speed and setting up some breaks for the men around him. and scoring plenty of points himself as well. So this one matchup against the Titans is, I think I just want to load up with Knights and just hope that, if they put on a score, then it's going to be, there's going to be plenty of rewards there for me and my GDS team. So this is probably the 1 week, that I do look at fading Herbie Farnworth. Is that, silly, or have I got some chance there of coming up positive?
Yeah, I don't think it's silly at all. I think, like you said, he finished on 56 GDS points, which is actually almost double what the Roosters have been allowing to left centers this season. So obviously, as you say, he is matchup proof in a sense that he did outscore every other left center that has come up against the Roosters. And the Dolphins match up against the Eels to kick off this round. And obviously, there will probably be plenty of points in this game. We know Para like to give up points. We know Dolphins like to give up points. Both teams have got some decent attacks. So I think there's every opportunity for Farnworth. Para allow 44 GDS points on average to left centers, which is slightly above the average, but it's more in line with what the sort of average is for left centers across the park. So yeah, I think that it's a pretty good option going with someone like Bradman Best in that really positive matchup, as you said, 55 points that Titans allow to left centers, and obviously pretty much across the park that left side, right side for the Knights are going to fire. Some of the other options are pretty not as appealing. KL Aero, for example, Manly allow only 27 points to left centers so far this season. So that might be a bit of a watch and wait and see what that looks like. Someone like Nick Meaney, who we obviously talked about last week, needing the kicking tee, hasn't necessarily got that yet. He hasn't earned that back. Manly only allowed 20. That's the wrong one. Tigers only allowed 29 points to right centers there. So Nick Meaney might not be a shout. Garrick, if you want to play Garrick in the game this week, obviously we didn't have him last week. The Sharks allow only 33 points to right centers. So there's all these options here that on paper their matchup doesn't look great, whereas Best's obviously jumping out of the page with that 55 average that the Titans allow. So I think it's a pretty risk-free option that you're taking. In Best individually, I guess that the risk is involved in taking all the other players around him as well. But as you said, if the Knights put on a big score, then those boys are all going to be involved in it. Sharp, Ponga, Lucas, Best, Marju even as well. They're all going to have a bit of a hand in that. So, yeah, I think that the Best play is a good play. It might even be the best play. But, yeah, I think I might just stick with the 50-odd points, 55 points that I'm going to get with Farnworth in a decent matchup where plenty of points could be scored as well, because I'm playing it a little bit safer still in that GDS Cup, and then across my other squads is where I might look at slotting in Best at a few different spots.
Yeah, can't argue with that. Fair call. Certainly seen some very low performances from Best if the Knights don't click, but this is certainly one matchup. They might not even win. It could be a 38-34 type ball game, and that would just be amazing for GDS. So, yeah, look, Herbie will find his way into a couple of my squads, but yeah, I really like that Bradman Best play, particularly since I guess we'll get on the wingers now, but I don't think I'm going to have any space for Greggy Marju this week, despite him obviously having a pretty nice matchup there on the end of that red hot backline.
Yeah, definitely. And look, wingers, I guess that we jump across to wingers. It's again, just another position that's set and forget for me in Karaz and Sharp. We've already talked at length about the Knights and their ability or their newfound ability to be able to attack. And obviously that came quite easy against the Rabbitohs, but Sharp's in everything and he's a competitor and he never gives up. And he's got his hands on the ball more than probably anyone else in the team, maybe except for KP at times as well. Both Karaz and Sharp have some unreal flaws and then has some really great upside. And we saw that from Karaz the weekend just gone as well, and how dominant he was. And I think he's really pushed for an Origin jersey. I think that, if I was the coach, and obviously I'm not, but Karaz is just doing things that I think is worthy of an Origin spot.
Yeah, absolutely. And Brian Toto comes back at the right time. I think Lomax is only a week or two away. So Loz is going to have a couple of big decisions to make there for those wing spots there in Sky Blue. But yeah, look, could this be considered chasing last week's points if we're playing two wingers who scored hat tricks and 180 points between them? No, look, absolutely not. Sharp averaging 30 tackles and only the 2 misses over the past month, which is just insane for a ball running half with such a attacking upside, playing in a pretty handy team when all things click as well. And we just saw Jacob Kiraz pump out 116 points. Yeah, he scored the 3 tries, but look, we know he's already got a good floor and clearly has a monster ceiling as well. So when someone can prove that they're that capable of scoring points, it's got to be a brave man to leave him out of your team as well. They do play the Raiders. It's actually a first versus second, top of the table clash there if you're looking at the NRL ladder. But the Raiders can be susceptible. We saw Su'Afalongo on the right wing there for the Storm have a massive first half. I think he was on 44 points inside the first 20 or 25 minutes there with a line break, 4 or 5 tackle busts and a try assist after a second line break as well there against the Raiders before the Raiders sort of kicked into gear as well. But they're obviously pretty susceptible down there on their left edge, and that's exactly where Kiraz is going to play as well. He gets plenty of work out of his own half. He loves to throw an offload, and that's not going to change in his game. It just gets such a nice roll on. There's 3 or 4 forwards trying to wrap him up, and he just sort of pops that ball over the top, and the Dogs carry on upfield. And that must be really difficult for some of those big forwards there. And we know that the Raiders have such a big forward pack. They're a great forward pack, but if you can move them laterally and if you can make them run, after a few offloads, that's one way to getting on top of them as well. And as soon as the Dogs spread the ball out to their edges, they're damaging on both sides of the field as well. Crichton was up back to his best and setting Kiraz up for a number of those tries as well. So, 1v2 on paper, but still a couple of good matchups there for Kiraz there on the wing.
Yeah. And you touched on him, Su'Afalongo. Joe Boney wants to know if he's a pod and whether that might be someone that you're considering playing this week.
Yeah, go Joe Boney. Thanks for joining, mate. Oh, mate, probably more so during the Origin period where we're sort of looking for those guys with a really big ceiling. Probably just not in a week where we've got the likes of Kiraz, Sharp, and then even Marju as well. He's obviously super exciting on the end of a pretty explosive back line, but we know his best position is fullback. He can just slice through the middle of the field at will. I think it was his debut, against the Bronx last season or 2 seasons ago, where he sort of just came on and absolutely tore them up in that first half with 2 tries. So not this week, Jay Boney, but certainly over the Origin period. So if you've got yourself a Su'Afalongo card, hang on to that one closely and whip him out during Origin when we don't have, the likes of Kiraz or To'o or Lomax, and a few of the other teams are on the buys as well. So not for Game Day squad this week, but certainly an up and coming fantasy player. If Pappy goes down and Fa'alongo gets a number of weeks in the fullback position, and we can play him in our wings on Game Day squad, that's going to be a bit of a game changer, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. And just on Fa'alongo, they come up against the West Tigers. The West Tigers actually limit right side wingers to only 33 points this season so far. They're more susceptible on their left side of allowing 50 GDS points. So you probably want to go to the left side of the park rather than the right there for the Melbourne Storm, if that's something that you're going to consider. The other player that's up there is Dean Mariner. He's obviously got a good matchup. We've already talked about the Broncos versus the Rabbitohs quite a bit, and he might be a potential pod. And then one player that we haven't talked about that's not there is Brian To'o. Obviously, he comes back in. Is he fully fit? Who knows if he is ever fully fit. Obviously, we saw pre-Vegas round, he doing flips and whatever else on the stage, and then
the splits. Yeah, bizarre.
So who knows what's going on with Brian To'o there and that injury. But I just think I might hold for a week and just watch how that plays out. The Cowboys are pretty good at limiting points to wingers as well. So they're only averaging around 30 points on both sides of the park to wingers. So maybe that might be a sort of sit and watch for this week and just see how the Penrith Panthers play. Because obviously they looked good, but they've looked good in a couple of games, and they've come back and had some pretty poor performances after that win or two. So let's just have a watch and wait on someone like Brian To'o.
Just quickly, Brian To'o, you might remember his 21 tackle break game last season. Guess who that was against?
North Queensland Cowboys.
Correct. Just for something to think about while you fall asleep later on tonight, thinking about your game day squad team.
I wasn't going to think about it, but now I definitely will. Thank you.
21 tackle breaks is ridiculous.
21. That's 60 odd points there alone. Sif Kanga there in the comments. Love it, mate. 2 cans of Coke and he'll be ready, but we'll be watching Toto this week as well. Maybe we need to ring Cleary and just check whether Toto's had his 2 cans of Coke before jumping onto the park. Alrighty, let's finish this off with fullbacks. And obviously the big name that's missing from our fullback list is James Tedesco, who has been on an absolute tear. They've obviously, a tear of his own, sorry. They've obviously got a bye this week, so we've got to look elsewhere. And looking elsewhere, there's probably 2 names there that jump out at everyone, and that's probably Kalen Ponga and Ryan Pappenhausen that most people are going to play. So it'll probably come down to that third player and where you're thinking you're going to play that third spot. More than likely, I would suggest that most coaches are going to stick with 3 fullbacks, but we've talked about some options in the centre and the wing position where you might chuck a cheeky pod in there for your third bench spot. But are you thinking of just sticking with your 3 fullbacks? And if so, who are you going with?
I am, yeah. It will be 3 fullbacks. I did sort of flirt with the idea of throwing in another winger in there, like maybe a Marju or a Mariner. I do know that I think it was XRP and a few other boys that finished high on the leaderboard did play 3 wingers with Marju, Sharp and Kiraz, which was something I hadn't really even considered. I was speaking with JT at the Caxton on Friday night, and I did ask him that very question: have you ever played 3 wingers, or would you? And even he said no, he's never even considered that, and he just wants the upside for the fullbacks, which is obviously what we talk about week in, week out. So yeah, I'll stick to the 3 fullbacks, and for me, I think Drinkwater looms as one of the next best options outside of Ponga and Pappy. Again, that tough matchup on paper you see against Penrith. Last year you would have just put a red line through that straight away, but we know that this year's a different story. Hammer scored that nice 100, only 3 or 4 rounds ago. And we've had some big performances since. Cobbo, 64 just last weekend in the team that got smashed. Obviously the Panthers are finding some form. They're still allowing some points through defence, but you'd expect that to get a little bit better this season. Drinky's just been incredible this year, though, hasn't he? You probably don't really say Drinkwater's name in the same sentence as the word consistent. Even if you just go back to last season, you have some monster performances, but then also have some really low ones, low 20s, and those can really kill your fantasy week. But, he's been super consistent this season. He's only scored under 50 twice, and one of them was round 1, and I think the other was pretty early on as well in round 4 or so too. So, look, he's been super consistent. He's obviously going to be a massive play over the origin period when we're short on a number of these gun fullbacks anyway. But with matchup at home, kicking goals against Penrith, who are susceptible to fullbacks, Drinky's in a lot of form. He almost single-handedly sort of brought them back into contention there against the Warriors on the weekend. He was just in absolutely everything. For me, he's just added something to his game that just keeps him competing for 80 minutes and accruing those points pretty nicely, like a number of the other, really good fullbacks in the competition. He hasn't really gone missing at all this season, and I can't see that happening this week against the Panthers either.
And the thing I like about Drinkwater as well is, he had a couple of down games early in the season, had a couple of 40s. But if we just take his last 3 games, he's averaging 72 points across those last 3 games. So, in terms of upside, I think he's finding some form. The Cowboys are finding some form. As you said, they were just unlucky to go down against the Warriors there at Magic Round the week just gone. So I think Drinkwater is a really good option, or as Sif Kanga likes to call them, Dream Water. And
is that a slip of the tongue, or is that intentional? Because I don't mind it.
I like it a lot. And the other one he says there is he's not sure on Edwards just yet, and I'm not sure on Edwards either. I think if I'm going to play a third fullback, which I'm more than likely will, it is going to be either Drinkwater, Dreamwater, or Tommy Trbojevic. I think that's where I'm probably leaning. Look, the Sharks do only allow an average of 42 points to fullbacks this season, but there's something to be said about Turbo coming back, having the week off. He obviously was back the week before. Hopefully he's a bit fitter, a bit healthier, and probably ready to go. Something should be said as well for Manly being back at home after the week off. I think they will be quite dangerous back at Four Pines And so hopefully with that, it should be conducive for Tommy Trbojevic to be, a pretty dominant figure in this game. And if we go back to a couple of years, 2021, Turbo scored a massive 137 fantasy points against the Sharks. He had 3 tries, 3 try assists, 15 tackle breaks, and he only had 67 minutes in that game. So if we could get anything close to that with Turbo, again, back at 4 Pines, up against the Sharks that have had a pretty long run of it over the last few weeks, obviously starting their campaign this season in Vegas as well. I could see Turbo putting on a bit of a masterclass down at 4 Pines.
Yeah, that 49 he scored coming back from injury again against the Panthers, who are susceptible to fullbacks. He wasn't looking amazing in that game. He was, holding that, carrying that leg around the park for some of that match, but still pumped out a 49. He is every chance of going boom in this sort of match at home after a nice rest, Sunday arvo. But look, those scores of 24 and 6 in rounds 2 and 4, they worry. They'd worry anyone, wouldn't they? But look, if you're looking for someone spicy to get you back up on that leaderboard, I think that's one of the spiciest of the round.
No, I've got 2 spicier, and this will be a little bit of a preview into maybe our pod of the week that will drop Thursday or Friday over on TikTok or Instagram. And I've got 2, and I haven't decided where I'm leaning yet. But I've got 2 fullbacks that could be the pod of the week, and I'm going to drop one of them now, and it is Chance Nickel-Cloxton against the Dragons. CNK in a big game. We haven't seen a big game from him for a few weeks, and I think he could go off against the Dragons team that are susceptible to fullbacks this season. So I think CMK, maybe he might be a league winner or a round winner for some people this week.
Geez, I'm just pulling up his stats now because he was certainly someone that we looked to whack into our squads fairly frequently last season. He was just getting it done with, obviously, that link-up play with SJ, just like we see Nathan Cleary and Dill Edwards have made a big habit of over the last number of seasons as well. But without SJ this season, CNK sort of gone under the radar a little bit. He's got some decent scores, a couple above 50, but, some really low scores as well. There's an injury or 2 in there too. I'll be looking forward to your TikTok and Instagram reel and seeing why I should be playing CNK, because if that comes off, that could be a nice big pop play.
Yeah, well, let's hope. Let's see how they go, and hopefully the Warriors, again, have another big win, and CNK is a big part of that. The watch as well, probably from a Warriors fan point of view, not so much a GDS point of view, is RTS has been named on the extended bench, coming back from injury, so that will be interesting to see. Obviously, that adds so much depth to the Warriors team, and he's just a difference maker in that side. And so if we can get him back as well, I think that's only going to help CNK in a potentially positive matchup.
DWZ coming back as well. Things are going well for the Warriors, and they're 3rd on the ladder. How good?
How good. That's why I'm wearing my jersey this week. Alrighty, let's take a look at our starter sides. Obviously, I am still in the GDS Cup, so I still have a competition ahead of me as well as the normal 4 competitions. So I'm going up against the Waddlers there. So take a good hard look there, Waddlers. That is the team that you are going up against. Make one change and you could win and could beat me. That's all you need to do. Obviously, a few differences there as well, mate, which is great to see. Get a little bit nervous when we have too many of the same players each and every week. So it's great to see that.
Yeah.
Great to see that. Alrighty, you teased it before. We got a little bit something special for Bro Down Showdown this week. It is coming into round 10. So we have had 10 shows to start the year. And obviously you had another win. I just cannot put it together. Wade Egan and Robson, I think that 3 points or something difference there between them. Just could not put that overall competition together. But would you like to reveal what we're potentially giving away while I get this wheel set up, mate?
Yes, I can do that. I just have to rewind the brain a couple of minutes ago when we spoke about this. I've got a couple of diamond cards to give away to the person that you spin on the wheel who commented my name in the YouTube videos last week to predict me to win the Bro Down Showdown. And then we're going to give whoever wins an option. So we got a couple of options, and one of them is that man that you just spoke about. So there's a CNK diamond available as a well done. We've also got a Nick Meaney diamond as an option. I think there's a Ronaldo Mulatalo. Is there one that I'm missing?
Connor Tracy.
Connor Tracy.
One I think we spoke about. Yeah, Connor Tracy Diamond.
Connor Tracy. So round 10, we like the round 5, 10, 15, 20 as something a little bit bigger, a little bit different. So I don't think there were too many that commented my name last week. And for everyone watching who didn't, this is what you're going to miss out on, one of these diamonds. And Dill's already spoken about a couple of these and one that he's really considering playing in his squad just this week. And they're probably all going to be handy over the Origin period anyway. But someone's going to get their hands on a pretty handy diamond in the next couple of minutes.
And you should be able to see the wheel on screen. You can see that there are only 3 names that picked you, mate. There was about 15 comments and only 3 of them went with you last round. So they have really put themselves in good stead to potentially win this. So let's spin the wheel and see how we go. Good luck, everyone. That is Lambs, Mel's Misfits, and Sif Kanga. And there it is. As luck would have it.
It's the man that's been here all night long.
Unreal. The man that we love. Good on you, Sif. So let us know. We can repeat those players again if you like.
I think we've got Charles Nickel Clockstad, Nick Meaney, Connor Tracy, Ronaldo, Mulitalo. You can sit on it and think about it for a while, or you can type C&K's name in right now.
Up the wires. Alrighty, and then as always, we spun the wheel just before we went live, and this week the Bro Down Showdown is all about the backs. So we've got wing, fullback, and centre.
And we've gone for these matchups. For winger, Dill's gone for Sharp over Mike Kiraz. He's gone for Pappy. I've gone for Ponga out the back. And our centres, Selwyn Cobbo versus my Bradman Best. So if you think Dill can finally turn the tables, comment his name on the Fantasy Bros YouTube channel once this video ends. If you think I can get the win again and go up 1,000 to 2, comment Stu in those comments as well. Only 3 people were a chance of winning a pretty special prize, so don't miss out.
Unreal.
Has made a decision yet?
Just before we go, he has made a decision. He is going with the Wars C&K. That is a C&K diamond straight to you, Sif Kanga. Well done, mate. Thank you for your support. You are always here. You're one of the first people to comment. So we are more than happy that you won that. Congratulations, mate. And we'll get in contact with you and organise that trade over to you. Jay Bonnie's jumped straight in, and he is going on the Stew train again this week. He thinks that I know you said 1,000, but I think it'll be 8-2. I think if you get up this week or 9-2. So we'll see how we go. Alrighty, that is it. As always, like we said, please feel free to comment who you think will win in Bro Down Showdown. You can win some massive prizes. We'll be back to our normal scheduled time next Wednesday, the 14th of May at 7 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. That'll be our round 11 show. Don't forget to jump over onto our TikTok, our Instagram at FantasyBros AU, where we will drop our pods of the week. And we're doing something a little bit different. I think we might have a couple of pods on offer there, maybe one in the forwards and one in the back this week. So keep an eye out for that. Make sure that you comment who you think will win. And as always, we really appreciate your support and love that you are joining us each and every week. Good luck for the week ahead. It's going to be a massive round 10 heading into the bye period and the Origin period very soon. Don't forget, sign up, use the promo code FBRL25. Make sure you share, support, like, etc., and check out the Discord as well. Thanks, Stu. Thanks, everyone, for joining us.
Thanks, Dill. Good